Hey y'all, just real quick before we dive into the main program, I just want to give a quick word about the platform that I'm using, Anchor FM. It's been a good platform so far with the program and just distributing. It's a multi-platform sort of deal, so it sends out to Spotify, Google, iTunes, a whole list of hosting sites. So it's definitely a good place to start if you're a beginner or who wants to step into this field. You really don't need any experience at all. You just do it, right? So the sponsorship has been a good deal for me so far, and definitely a good way to build on the program that you want to distribute or you want to record. So yeah, so definitely check it out, Anchor FM. Also, if you want to skip these sponsorship intros, you can go to my Patreon, Collapse Talk, and for $1 you can get early access, ad-free access, as well as other exclusive content that I build on and work on. So definitely check it out there, Patreon. But yeah, so now without further ado, we will jump into the main program. Hello, y'all. Welcome back. This is episode 24 of Collapse Talk, and this is Gabriel Marrero that you're listening to. And welcome back. This has been a last couple weeks, a holiday season or the beginning of the holiday season. So I hope y'all had a good Thanksgiving and ate well and did your best to avoid any family drama. I mean, I know we all experienced something, so we can just reminisce about that. But yeah, I mean, it's the holiday season and we're ramping up for the Christmas time. And I'm sure everybody's gonna, if they still believe in the culture war crap, they're gonna start talking about it's Merry Christmas, not Happy Holidays or something. So whatever. Real quick, I did want to apologize about last episode. The quality wasn't best there. I didn't realize about that staticky noise, and I wasn't exactly sure how to fix it. Turns out on an inspection there was one of the ports, the plugins, I didn't plug it in completely, so that's a bit why it was kind of like that sound. So I'll have to do an audio check before each episode just to make sure that it's the best quality. Just a rookie mistake, but yeah, I learned my lesson there. So yeah, so we're just gonna move forward, and I also wanted to give another update just personally. I've got a day job. So, or finally, thank God, because I was really needing to get some real work in. It's like, blue collar work, just doing like dishwashing at a bakery. So I'm washing pans, and it's pretty physically intense because I have to like lift those batter mixers, the bowls for that. But, it's a bakery where there's mostly girls and women. So they needed a guy there to do some heavy lifting. So that's something that I can do. And compared to other work, physical labor jobs that I've done, this is nothing. So I can't really complain whenever they like tell me to do something. I can't complain because I'm like, this is not like landscaping. This is nothing like restaurant work that I've done. This is so, yeah. So I'm just glad to be working, because they were when I started doing it and started just like scrubbing things down, washing it, and they're like, "Wow, you're really good." I'm like, "Yeah, I want to make an impression." So, it's good to be working finally, having a real job, doing that gig work, DoorDash stuff. It's been okay to, you know, barely pay the bills, but like if I didn't have some support from outside, I would be really messed up. So there's that. So I'm gonna have to like fit in, because it's like a real 9 to 5. So I'm gonna have to fit in recordings for this podcast on the weekends or whenever I can fit it in. So yeah, just being consistent there, but just trying to make money and pay my dues. I'm just trying to set myself up, because I don't know how am I going to continue with college. I haven't exactly like told my parents, because that's going to be a big issue when I tell them that, but kind of just slowly letting some of my personal friends know, and they are far more understandable. So it's nice to at least have some understanding in that area, or yeah. So anyway, regardless, I just wanted to talk about my personal stuff and personal updates there. And if you're listening to this, you're on the public platforms, you're getting a 48-hour difference, because I'm going to release this first on Patreon. Currently, there's just one listener, but you're free to tune in there and get earlier access, and yeah, just enjoy the good stuff there. So yeah, with this show, I talk about collapse, and it's a bit of an umbrella, these different fields and areas that I talk about, because collapse is all encompassing. It's not just one specific area. So you have our domestic collapse of the US empire, the international collapse of the global world order, and then, of course, the natural breakdown of just nature, mass extinction. So, yeah, so we'll just talk about those things. And domestically, we have, had the election, of course, and these last couple of weeks been a bit tumultuous, because Trump is kind of trying to delegitimize it, calling it into question. People are still trying to say things about fraud, and my position is just, I don't care, because I didn't vote for either of them, so I really don't care who wins, because we've all lost. America has lost in general. But, it appears as though Joe Biden is going to be the next president, and, they're just setting stuff up for that. They're also trying to just set up stuff for the Senate races, House races, so it's not just the presidency. The Democrats have a real chance to have control of all three houses. So, yeah. But, Biden has just been solidifying victory there, and they've been doing recounts and such. And, yeah, they've just been helping out there, trying to get that in order. But, there's also been reports of Trump taking notes of whichever GOP representative is acknowledging that Joe Biden is president. There's only been a handful of the GOP saying that. Basically, they're just trying to keep their party in line. So even though Trump is trying to soften the blow, he's still saying things, trying to delegitimize the victory, and his supporters, of course, support that, and they're cheering it on. So yeah, that's what you can surmise from. I mean, he's trying to cement his victory, Biden is doing it through the media, the rounds are there, and all these election officials are basically saying he has won. Again, any kind of evidence I look up, I just have to be cynical about it, because it could mean anything. I have no stake in who wins, honestly. But I did want to point out an interesting article from the Associated Press talking about Attorney General Barr. He is saying that there hasn't been any widespread election fraud that would have some sort of effect. So this is coming from Trump's Attorney General, Department of Justice. If they're saying that, then I kind of have to believe in some way that, the results are the results. Of course, Trump doesn't want to hear that, and supporters don't want to hear it. But since it's coming from his Department of Justice and his Attorney General, we'll have to take its word. So, reading from the Associated Press, disputing President Donald Trump's persistent, baseless claims, Attorney General William Barr declared Tuesday the U.S. Justice Department has uncovered no evidence of widespread voter fraud that could change the outcome of the 2020 election. Barr's comment in an interview with the Associated Press contradict the concerted effort by Trump, his boss, to subvert the results of last month's voting and blocking President-elect Joe Biden from taking place in the White House. Barr told the AP that U.S. attorneys and FBI agents have been working to follow up specific complaints and information they've received, but to date, we have not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected a different outcome in the election. The comments, which drew immediate criticism from Trump's attorney, were especially notable coming from Barr, who has been one of the president's most ardent allies. Before the election, he had repeatedly raised the notion that mail-in voting could be especially vulnerable to fraud during the coronavirus pandemic, as Americans feared going to the polls and instead chose to vote by mail. More to Trump's liking, Barr revealed in the AP interview that in October he had appointed U.S. Attorney John Durham as a special counsel, giving the prosecutor the authority to continue to investigate the origins of the Trump-Russia probe after Biden takes over and making it difficult to fire him. Biden hasn't said what he might do with the investigation, and his transition team didn't comment Tuesday. Trump has long railed against the investigation into whether his 2016 campaign was coordinating with Russia, but he and Republican allies had hoped the results would be delivered before the 2020 election and would help sway voters. So far, there has been only one criminal case, a guilty plea from a former FBI lawyer to single false statement charge. So, yeah, that's coming from Trump's Attorney General. And, take that for however you want. I mean, if he's saying that and he's a pretty staunch supporter, then, there's got to be something to it. Again, you see a lot of people who they're Trump supporters, so they just want to believe that, they can keep it up, or, they don't want to give up just yet. Again, I have no stake because it's not like I want Biden to win either. It's just, just getting it over with. It's just like, okay, it's done. All right. So there's that. And of course, we've got basically like just Trump trying to clean house and trying to get some last minute stuff done before he leaves. I guess you could say he's trying to sabotage some things before Biden takes control. Who knows? But again, as I said, they're trying to appoint a special counselor that Biden can't fire, they're just trying to get some stuff done before that. And notably, they're trying to withdraw troops and such, but I'll kind of talk about that a little later on. But Trump is saying one thing, he's slowly setting the stage for his successor, but trying to make it a difficult transition. Not necessarily that he won't relinquish power, but just giving off a mess that just makes it worse, So, so that's from Bill Barr. And, we could continue on with the Georgia runoff elections that are going on with the Senate. Trump was doing a rally there, and he was just, he was just saying some things, and he was, he's trying to be a campaigner for the Republican candidates there, but he's still trying to say oh, I didn't lose, or so he can't admit that he lost, and if he did lose, it was his plan all along. He's he's just trying to make it seem like he has control. That's the main aspect of it, and his supporters, of course, want to maintain that illusion. So they're just with the guy. They're just with him. So that's there. And I kind of wanted to steer away from the election, talking about that, because it's done. Or, they're going to try to drag it out for as long as possible. But there's only so much room to focus on there. But there are more pressing matters. So I did want to highlight another issue. It's not necessarily an election thing, but it has to deal with our opioid crisis that we are experiencing. Overdose deaths, or through the roof, and people are, addicted to, pharmaceuticals and other opioids. So one of the major opioid pharmaceutical companies, Purdue Pharma, had to go to court, and they recently pleaded guilty. And so I'm reading this from the justice.gov, Department of Justice website, reading about the appeal. This is from November 24th. So, and it reads, opioid manufacturer Purdue Pharma pleads guilty to fraud and kickback conspiracies. So I'm going to read their statement. Quote, opioid manufacturer Purdue Pharma LP pleaded guilty today in federal court in Newark, New Jersey to conspiracies to defraud the United States and violate the anti-kickback statute. Purdue pleaded guilty to an information charging it with 3 felony offenses, 1 count of dual object conspiracy to defraud the United States and to violate the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, and 2 counts of conspiracy to violate the federal anti-kickback statute. Quote, the abuse and diversion of prescription opioids has contributed to a national tragedy of addiction and deaths, in addition to those caused by illicit street opioids, said Deputy Attorney General Jeffrey A. Rosen. Today's guilty pleas to 3 felony charges send a strong message to the pharmaceutical industry that illegal behavior will have serious consequences. Further, today's convictions underscore the department's commitment to its multi-pronged strategy for defeating the opioid crisis. Quote, Purdue admitted that it marketed and sold its dangerous opioid products to healthcare providers, even though it had reasons to believe those products or providers were diverting them to abusers, said Rachel A. Honing, First Assistant U.S. Attorney for the District of New Jersey. The company lied to the Drug Enforcement Administration about steps it had taken to prevent such a diversion, fraudulently increasing the amount of its products it was permitted to sell. Purdue also paid kickbacks to providers to encourage them to prescribe even more of its products. Continuing, quote, as today's plea to felony charges shows, Purdue put opioid profits ahead of people and corrupted the sacred doctor-patient relationship, said Christina Nolan, U.S. Attorney for the District of Vermont. We hope the company's guilty plea sends a message that the Justice Department will not allow Big Pharma and Big Tech to engage in illegal profit-generating schemes that interfere with sound medicine. We hope also that this guilty plea will bring some sense of justice to those who have suffered from opioid addiction involving oxycodone, and some vindication for families and loved ones for those who did not survive such addictions. Quote, this case makes clear that no company, including Purdue Pharma, whose actions harm the health and safety of the American public, is beyond the reach of law enforcement, said Assistant Director Calvin Shivers of the FBI's Criminal Investigative Division. The opioid epidemic continues to spread across the United States, impacting countless Americans and harming communities. Together with our law enforcement partners, the FBI is committed to investigating and holding criminals accountable for the roles they play in fueling this crisis. So, yeah, they've been dealing with that. Of course, our opioid crisis is a serious issue, and they've at least started with Purdue trying to bring these industry and pharmaceutical companies to account. It's certainly it's sad that we're in this position to begin with, where we have addiction problems and other underlying mental health issues, overdoses, addicts, and it's you go to some communities and they're just ravaged with opioid problems, especially in like rural settings. Like you look at Ohio, these I guess you could call Rust Belt areas. They've definitely had to suffer from this, and yeah, I mean, it's just what it is. Where we're at, and it's a step forward in bringing these corporations and holding them accountable, bringing justice, but it's not necessarily going to change anything. I'm not too optimistic that they're going to suddenly deal with this opioid crisis. Because one way we could deal with this opioid crisis is to legalize marijuana. That might be like a very like simple or, simplistic outlook, but it certainly is a step forward. The drug war has a big role to play with this opioid crisis. People turn towards these opioids to just get high and escape the reality, whatever you want to call it, and not using a natural means to do that, which would be this plant. We could go on with that. But yeah, it's just, it's a very serious issue. And it's not just these opioids as well. There's certainly other aspects that the pharmaceutical industry takes advantage of the American people. Because, I hear from like different comments, people saying like, when they come to the United States, they're hit with all these ads, these pharmaceutical ads, and it kind of blows them away because they don't get that from where they're from. So it's just like any other product. It's just like, oh, are you feeling sad? Well, here's a pill to make you feel better. Or, again, I've never really been one to take prescriptions. I mean, if I was actually sick, then yes, I would take that. But I've never had to take, and it depends on who you are, If you need it, then yes, sure, go ahead. I just try to steer away from it because I hear all these horror stories about people taking prescriptions, either painkillers or, antidepressants, whatever you want to call it. Like it has some adverse effect that I don't want to deal with. I don't want to have to my body, put my body through that. So that it's just up to you again. And again, of course, opioids and antidepressants are two very different things, but it's kind of under that umbrella of, prescription drugs, pharmaceuticals, and the degradation of mental health in this society. So that is one aspect to look at. And I'm sure there are other opioid manufacturers that are going to court, having to pay whatever. Let me actually look down a bit further. All right, so right, on November 17th, so this is a statement they're saying. So on November 17th, 2020, the bankruptcy court in the Southern District of New York approved the financial terms of the global resolution with the company. The resolution includes the condition that the company cease to operate in its current form and instead emerge from bankruptcy as a public benefit company or entity with a similar mission designed for the benefit of the American public. The proceeds of the PBC will be directed towards state and local opioid abatement programs based on the value that would be conferred to state and local governments through the PBC. The department is willing to credit up to $1.775 billion against the agreed $2 billion forfeiture amount. The department looks forward to working with the creditor groups in the bankruptcy and charting the path forward for this PBC to best accomplish public health goals. The global resolution does not resolve claims that states may have against Purdue or members of the Sackler family, nor does it impede the debtors and other third parties' ability to recover any fraudulent transfers, except to the extent of Purdue's admissions as part of its criminal resolution. The claims resolved by the civil settlement are allegations only. There has been no determination of liability in the civil matters. So, yeah, a lot of jargon there, but they're trying to, switch it around and try to make it a benefit. Yeah, this is mainly a civil suit. So it's interesting that they have all these civil suits for effectively, a corporate version of a drug dealer, a heroin dealer. But yeah, they just got to pay like billions or millions, whatever. But you're not going to see any executives get jailed over this. Or maybe I'm just reading this wrong. But yeah, this is a civil lawsuit, civil settlement. This is very much like, just, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, your son overdosed. I'm sorry. Here's some money. That's kind of like that version of that. But yeah, it's kind of where we're at. But it's just good to see that they're doing something about it. Yeah. So moving on. So I kind of wanted to talk about this stimulus package that they're trying to push forward. Of course, Americans in this country are facing the brink financially. There just seems to be no relief coming. As I said, Your relief is to get back to work. Shut the fuck up and get back to work. Yeah. So, I'm reading this from Business Insider. So, now they're coming to an agreement, a deal that is less than the initial agreement or less than the initial offer, because Trump was willing to give them 1.8 trillion and he was willing to have payments directly towards the American people, but he wanted to put his name on it, and that was a no-go for Nancy Pelosi. She didn't want to do it. Yeah, I mean, now when I hear Nancy Pelosi talk, I'm just like, oh, get this witch out of my head. Yeah, it's and she's saying it was not a mistake. So she completely defends her grandstanding, and she's she doesn't see any issue with the fact that they're making a deal that was less than before, and it's still not going to help the American people. And these people have the audacity to be like, the American people are starving, but they do nothing about it. Yeah. So reading this from Business Insider, just the top statements, right? So House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Friday strongly defended her decision to reject the Trump administration's 1.8 trillion stimulus offer. It was not a mistake, she said. Some House Democrats called on her to strike a deal before the election, but Pelosi said the administration was putting forward only half a loaf. Sure, okay. So reading quote, at her weekly press conference on Friday, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi defended her support of a stimulus package half the size of what the Trump administration offered in October. She cited the game changer of Joe Biden's election as the 46th president, as well as the positive vaccine developments in her backing of the $908 billion relief bill proposed earlier this week. The California Democrat argued her previous insistence for a broad spending package of at least $2.2 trillion was producing results. It was not a mistake. It was a decision that has taken us to a place where we could do the right thing without other, shall we say, considerations in the legislations that we don't, she said, adding, I'm very proud of where we are. Asked what changed when she dismissed a larger compromise package in the House only to later support a smaller one for the Senate, Pelosi responded, a vaccine. In answer to our prayers with 95% effectiveness with Pfizer and Moderna, there may be others coming forward. That is a total game changer, a new president and a vaccine. So she only wanted to make a deal when, they had leverage before, but they just wanted more. And now you see the deal that they're making now. And again, no payments, no relief for the American people. So it's like, what is this? Pelosi's remarks illustrate the sharp change in her position from earlier this fall. For months, she negotiated a sizable rescue package with Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, with the White House ultimately offering a $1.8 trillion stimulus plan in early October, but she rejected it, citing an array of policy disagreements that neither side ever resolved. Some House Democrats called on her to strike a deal before the election, but Pelosi said the administration was putting forward only half a loaf that was inadequate to address the health and economic crises. She also had a contentious interview with CNN's Wolf Blitzer on her dismissal of the administration's offer in mid-October. Yeah, she was very... You see all these people talking to her saying, make the deal. Right, because making direct payments towards the American people is half a loaf. Again, I talk about stimulus and direct payments to Americans, and then of course there are questions of inflation and such. But again, she approved $5 trillion transfer to these corporations, so they won't bat an eye for that, right? But the American people, well, you see, it's a half a loaf. So there's that. Reading further. President Donald Trump strongly supported a large plan immediately leading up to the November 3rd election, though his views veered wildly at the time. Senate Republicans led by Mitch McConnell, though, would have been unlikely to support a package with the price tag nearly $2 trillion. The negotiations between Pelosi and the White House ultimately went nowhere this fall. The latest compromise relief plans contain funding for a $300 weekly federal unemployment benefits, small business aid, and more funds for public health systems and vaccines. It represents a significant reduction of the multi-trillion-dollar package that Democrats had pushed for the past 6 months. So, yeah, there's that. Actually, let me finish this up, actually. Congressional Democrats embraced the framework on Wednesday, saying it should be the starting point in negotiations with Republicans after months of gridlock. Though McConnell favors a slimmer rescue plan, some GOP senators have lined up behind the compromise proposal. The plan lacks legislative text, which is expected early next week. Meanwhile, Biden supports it, though he maintains that he will seek more federal aid after being sworn in on January 20th. Any package passed in the lame duck session is not enough, he said in a statement released on Friday. It's just the start. Congress will need to act again in January. Right. So, yeah, they're making a deal. Pelosi, she doesn't see any problems with her plan, and she doesn't see any issue with the fact that the plan is less than before, or the deal is less than before, and there's still no hope for the American people. No, not an issue whatsoever. She doesn't see what's wrong there. And of course, because her team won, yeah, great. Things have changed. Our team won. Yeah. Yeah. And people try to, they literally have her on the pedestal, like, yes, queen. Like, she's like the queen of the squad. Or I don't know if she's actually as popular as AOC or Ilhan Omar for our generation, but I've seen, she's a woman, she's a powerful, empowered woman, so yeah, that's definitely there. So yeah, so we have the stimulus package, the deal that was less than the one before, and we also have to contend with the second lockdown. COVID cases are accelerating, and it's been kind of difficult to try to because it's the holiday season, so everybody wants to meet up, and I'm trying to slowly say, hey, I don't want to be too exposed. What's the issue? You're being antisocial. Like, dude, there's a fucking pandemic. Did you forget? So, but it also doesn't help because my mom is moving to a new place, so I basically have to go and help her. But then she's gonna drag me around to see her friends, and I'm just like, no, why not? Man, it's just, so much bullshit. So anyway, we have to deal with the second lockdown, and I'm in Texas, and the governor has already said that there's not going to be a second lockdown. We'll see. But yeah, I just got this new job. Like, there can't be another lockdown. It's not even the lockdown is the issue. You lock shit down, but then you still make people pay their dues. So their source of income has been cut completely, but they still have to pay everything. Like, that's the issue. That's the problem. And that's what So we have the second lockdown, and I was watching a video of this restaurant owner in California, and she was doing her best to comply with the guidelines, and they just completely blocked or banned outdoor dining. So she had a whole patio area set up, but then they told her that she couldn't do it, so she had to shut down. And then as she was coming into the restaurant to do what she needed to do, she looked across the street, not even across the street, just like right across the parking lot. There was a whole company, catering company, movie catering, doing the exact same thing that she did with the patio, with the dining area. So this is what is effectively happening, where you see these small businesses, they're forced to shut down, even though they're trying their best to comply with the guidelines. They got shut down completely. They got to lay off workers. You're on your own. You're on the street. No relief, no payment, no furlough, nothing. You're just, you're gone. And yeah. And then you see who's actually allowed to continue business and allowed to continue on, which is these corporate companies. And again, as I've said before, this is a corporate coup. This is a seizure of power. They're solidifying their control of the economy, trying to push out all the mom and pop shops, all the businesses. So what are we going to do there? Did want to talk about, so we'll talk about the lockdown in California that they're reimposing. And reading from the New York Times, quote, millions of people across Southern and Central California are likely to see outdoor dining shutter, playgrounds roped off, and hair salons closed within days. So they have all these restrictions for the American people, but then you see photos of the governor or some other elected official dining out, their wine and cheese parties. It's these people are, like I'm kind of glad I'm picking on Democrats now on the left a little more, because this is what I mean. This is the problem, because we have this elitist mentality of, okay, you have to stop what you're doing, but my life is going to continue just as normal because I'm powerful. I don't know. So yeah, reading quote, California, the first state to impose far-reaching lockdowns because of the coronavirus, announced on Thursday its strictest new measures since the earliest days of the pandemic in an effort to keep a surge in cases from overwhelming hospitals. Governor Gavin Newsom said the new round of regional stay-at-home orders would take effect as intensive care beds filled up. Millions of people across Southern and Central California are likely to see outdoor dining shuttered, playgrounds roped off, and hair salons closed within days if the available intensive care capacity in their area dips below a 15% threshold. The new restrictions will last for at least 3 weeks, strictly limit store capacity, allow restaurants to serve only takeout or delivery. The governor also said people should temporarily call off all non-essential travel. If we don't act now, our hospital system will be overwhelmed, Mr. Newsom said. If we don't act now, we'll continue to see our death rate climb. States' new orders feel eerily like the spring when spiraling deaths compelled leaders in California, New York, and elsewhere to start telling people to stay home. Only now things are even worse. More than 2,750 Americans died of the coronavirus on Thursday, and another 100,000 were in hospitals. Case count continues to skyrocket. In anticipation of a deadly holiday season, Governor John Carney of Delaware on Thursday issued a stay-at-home advisory asking people not to gather indoors with anyone outside their household. In Michigan, Governor Gretchen Whitmer recently ordered a 3-week shutdown that closed casinos and movie theaters and suspended in-person high school and college classes. Oregon, Washington State, Minnesota, and cities from Los Angeles to Philadelphia have also reimposed restrictions. In an interview with CNN on Thursday, President-elect Joseph R. Biden Jr. Said that on his first day of president, he would ask Americans to wear masks for 100 days. Just 100 days to mask, not forever, 100 days, and I think we'll see a significant reduction. What? He also said he had asked Dr. Anthony S. Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease expert, to play a central role in his administration to help combat the virus. Yeah, so we are seeing rapid acceleration of cases, COVID infections, hospitalizations, death, and I like how they put they put Joe Biden's full name there, Joseph R. Biden Jr. All right. Anyway, yeah, it's just this is I don't know, man. I think we're slowly becoming desensitized to it. I think this country just in general is desensitized to human life and death, because we have 250,000 Americans dead, and already you can kind of see people rationalizing like, well, it could have been worse, or those are acceptable losses. That's unacceptable in my mind, and this isn't over. We're going to see rapid cases of infections, rapid cases of death. We're already at 14 million cases in our country. Meanwhile, you look elsewhere and they're already at their low, or I don't know. Yeah, we could talk about that all day. So, yeah, they have the second restriction or second lockdown coming through in certain states. Texas, we'll have to see what they do there. I'm kind of hoping there isn't a lockdown because I really need to work right now. But yeah, it's hard to having to navigate with certain people and tell them, look, I don't feel too comfortable being around everybody right now. Well, you're being antisocial and you're going to be around family. It's the holidays. This isn't a normal holiday. But again, it's just hard to tell people these certain things. Whatever. Oh, you're just a downer. Whatever. So we have the lockdown there. And I wanted to talk about, kind of related to LA and the lockdown as well. So there has been talk of Eric Garcetti, Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti, and there's been talk of President-elect Joe Biden appointing Garcetti to his cabinet. So there have been some protests and demonstrations outside of his residence in Los Angeles, and I'll read from the Daily News. Quote, the 10th consecutive day of demonstrations outside Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti's official residence is planned for Thursday in an attempt to persuade President-elect Joe Biden not to appoint Garcetti to his cabinet. The theme of the protest will be defund the police, according to the organizers. About 100 people gathered Wednesday morning outside Getty House, chanting that Garcetti is the worst mayor in the nation and that he needs to address the immediate problems Los Angeles faces. During the protest, Melina Abdullah, a co-founder of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, instructed protesters to flood Twitter with messages asking Garcetti if he would remove his name from any shortlist Biden may have for consideration for cabinet positions, using the hashtag #BlockGarcetti. Quote, protests come with the territory as mayor, Garcetti said. I will always support people's right to make their voices heard peacefully and keep listening to what they have to say. I am honored to represent 4 million Angelenos, and I am singularly focused on saving lives and rebuilding a city out of this crisis that is more fair, just, and equitable. Angelenos are hurting badly right now, and I see that pain every day. Too many lives have been lost, but I know that our collective efforts have saved so many more. That work, more than anything else, is my guiding light right now. Black Lives Matter Los Angeles and Ground Game LA have vowed to conduct a demonstration every day until Biden commits to not appointing Garcetti to the cabinet. They are critical of Garcetti's handling of homelessness, public transportation, and other issues. Garcetti has repeatedly said that he has not sought a position with the incoming Biden administration. So, yeah, I mean, they have every right to protest Garcetti, and they're talking about, there's rumors, because they're saying there's rumors of him being in Trump or Biden's administration cabinet position. So we'll see how that turns out. Yeah, again, homelessness, public transportation, traffic, pollution. LA just seems like a bad place to live. I'm sorry. Every time I talk to a person from Cali, I'm like, I just do my best to shit on LA and see their reaction, and like the feeling is mutual. Even they're just like, I can't with LA. Yeah, it's just a cesspool. There's too many people there, too much industry. Of course, you also have Hollywood, so you got the lavish luxury, and again, it's our equivalent of Night City. With Cyberpunk coming out, I'm like all over that. But yeah, it's Night City. So, yeah, but they're protesting there. Black Lives Matter, defund the police, and I'm sure there's other reasons to protest and other groups there. Yeah, but again, we can just talk about not just Garcetti, but different appointees to Biden's cabinet, and it is not impressive. And you see a lot of these woke leftists talking about Biden, and they're trying to they're trying to mitigate I don't know how to describe it, because even they know that Biden is bad. But you come to realize that they only voted Biden because they wanted Trump out. And that's what they keep doing. They put us in a position where the guy in charge is so bad, you don't care how bad the other guy is, even though he might be secretly worse. So, yeah, this is what we've created, or this is what we've just... Anyway, we can talk about, because I've been listening to Jimmy Dore, and he's talked about Neera Tanden and other cabinet appointees and how they're establishment hacks, and just basically setting the stage for a neoliberal, fascist state, essentially. So we'll have to see there. I want to make another comment, actually, because I was watching a little interview. And this is what I mean. They're not even trying to hide it. So they were talking about Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, they were having a little interview and they were saying something like, "Oh well, I mean, yeah, I'm sure you have personal views and personal disagreements. How do you deal with that?" And he's like, "Well, I just do it like we did it with President Barack Obama. I mean, we're close colleagues and we try our best to work together. But she has a difference of opinion. She expresses it, and then I express myself." And he's just like, because he's senile, he's experienced dementia, but he's just effectively, basically along the lines, he said like, "Well, if a disagreement's bad enough, I'm just gonna have to pretend that I'm sick and step down." Or he said what was supposed to be a secret, but it was basically everybody knows it's not. But he just said it out loud, and everybody's like, "Oh," they kind of brushed it under the rug. But I see some Twitter posts or some YouTube videos, and people are just like, they're not hiding it. They're not hiding it, you know. So from now on, I'm just going to call Kamala Harris President Kamala Harris. Because that's effectively what's happening now. Because she's always in the background. And she's the, she's the empowered woman. She's leading from the front. Or she's the black female Dick Cheney, if you want to call it. I don't know. I feel like if I, even though there are real criticisms for Kamala Harris, I feel like if you spoke out loud enough, you get somebody trying to tell you to shut up. Like, like if I can already see people like defending AOC, right? They already like defend her to the death. And if you have any kind of criticism for her, shut up. So it's not exactly that they can counter you with policy position. So it's just emotion. And, that's something you have to avoid. So anyway, I was talking about Garcetti and the protests there, but just other cabinet positions for the Biden administration. You come to realize the team that he's setting up, the lobbyists, the corporatists, neoliberals, and people were genuinely talking about, well, maybe we can push him to the left, or maybe we can... No. What did you think was going to happen? They played you. They played us. But, hey, they're going to fuck it up, and then next election cycle, somebody worse is going to take power. So, there's that. So, again, on Collapse Talk, we kind of talk a lot about different subjects, and a major focal point on this show is the legalization of marijuana, or the decriminalization of marijuana. Again, I would like to smoke in peace. I keep telling myself, like, the only reason I want to leave Texas as a state is because of this marijuana prohibition. If they got rid of that, I would have no reason to leave, if I'm being honest. And I kind of like living here. I really do. But this is a major issue for me. This really is. And they're in the 1800s with this mentality. Okay. So we have the House passing a bill to decriminalize marijuana at a federal level. This is a good step. I don't think it's going to go anywhere because it could go to the Senate, and that's going to be an uphill battle. And then I feel like Joe Biden would find some kind of reason to just say, the kids you got to worry about, or some bullshit, because the pharmaceutical gave him a call and told him don't do it. But yeah, so. The House of Representatives, reading from CNN, the House of Representatives has approved legislation that would decriminalize marijuana and seek to address the devastating injustices caused by the war on drugs. Friday's vote in the Democratic-led House is the first time a chamber of Congress has voted on federal marijuana decriminalization. It has little chance of passing the Republican-led Senate. However, the bill passed largely along party lines, 222 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and Representative Justin Amash, a Libertarian, voted in support, while 158 Republicans and 6 Democrats voted against. The Republicans who voted for the bill are Florida Representative Matt Gaetz. That's actually really interesting. The bill's co-sponsor, as well as Representatives Brian Mast of Florida, Tom McClintock of California, Denver Riggleman of Virginia, and Don Young of Alaska. The Democrats against were Representative Cherry Bustos, Don Lipinski of Illinois, Henry Kuehler of Texas, Connor Lamb of Pennsylvania, Chris Pappas of New Hampshire, and Colin Peterson of Minnesota. Quote, millions of Americans' lives have been upended as a result of convictions for possessing small amounts of marijuana, and the racial disparities and conviction rates for those offenses are shocking as they are unjust. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, a Maryland Democrat, said in a statement after the vote, "That's why we passed the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement MORE Act today. The MORE Act would remove marijuana from the Controlled Substances Act and eliminate criminal penalties for individuals who manufacture, distribute, or possess marijuana. It also includes creating a process to remove prior convictions, known as expungement, and conduct sentencing review hearings for federal cannabis offenses. The measure would also authorize a 5% sales tax on marijuana products to invest in services such as job training, legal aid, and substance abuse treatment for individuals adversely impacted by the war on drugs. The tax revenue would also provide funds for small businesses, loans, and allow access to marijuana licensing and employment for economically disadvantaged individuals." So, again, there's only pros with marijuana legalization. There's only pros. But unless you're profiting off of the private prison industry or pharmaceuticals, then yeah, you're going to vote against it. So the people who are voting against this have something to lose financially, even though, everybody kind of benefits from marijuana legalization. This country just doesn't understand it. But, if you talked about, if you could unironically say, like, okay, well, if you're going to, force marijuana to be prohibited, we should also ban all tobacco products. You suggest something like that. What? Are you crazy? Because these, you talk about people like, because to them, of course, that's a a freedom issue, natural choice, or whatever. Yeah, that's ridiculous. But marijuana legalization, but these potheads and anyway, I'm getting kind of worked up about it. But it's just something that is so simple and obviously beneficial, but people are stuck with their taboos and ideas, and they would rather just keep it as is, and they don't want to change anything because this is the way it's worked, and change is scary. I don't like change. That's what it is. So, again, it's a step in the right direction, and it's showing, the progress that we're making. But you're really going to see that even with Joe Biden, they're going to drag their feet on this. They're going to try to make some excuse to weasel out and, yeah. So we'll see. So before I wrap up the domestic area, I wanted to talk about a trend that we're seeing with large corporations concerning unions, and the fact that these corporations are hiring spies to infiltrate these unions and groups and trying to basically, break up, union bust and such. This is a reading from Business Insider, specifically focusing on Amazon. Right, so private spies subcontracted by Pinkerton Agency, a firm Amazon employs, infiltrated and photographed a workers' strike at a warehouse on Black Friday in 2019, the Spanish media outlet reported. The spies compiled a 51-page document which includes photos of trade unionists, workers, and journalists who attended the strike, El Diario reported. Amazon has used Pinkerton spies to track warehouse workers and labor movements at the company in the past, according to the November report. The Spanish labor union CCOO has asked the judge to seize documentation relating to the report and said it was considering legal action against Amazon. An Amazon spokesperson told El Diario the e-commerce firm had not instructed Pinkerton or any other agency to spy on the strike. And also reading further, Amazon could face a court battle with Spanish workers' union over a report that said private investigators were hired to infiltrate and secretly surveil a strike outside one of its warehouses. According to a 51-page document, obtained by the Spanish news site El Diario, private detectives spied on an Amazon worker strike at a warehouse near Barcelona, Spain, on Black Friday in 2019. The strike was part of a broader freight worker strike in the province of Catalonia. El Diario reported that the private detectives who compiled the documents were employed by a Spanish company called Castor and Pollux, which had been subcontracted by the Pinkerton Agency. A November Motherboard report said Amazon employed the Pinkerton Agency to monitor union activity across Europe. The document contained photographs of trade unionists, workers, and even journalists who attended the strike, according to the El Diario report. Let me read a little further. An excerpt from the document reads, "We saw a group of people meeting who could be seen wearing CCOO and UGT union bibs and vests. They're recorded for possible identification at subsequent events." This was accompanied by a photograph. Castor and Pollux declined to comment when contacted by El Diario, citing client confidentiality. An Amazon spokesperson told El Diario the e-commerce firm had not instructed Pinkerton or any other agency to spy on the strike. The Pinkerton Agency and Castor and Pollux did not immediately respond to Business Insider's request for comment. The Spanish labor union CCOO on Tuesday announced its plans to bring legal action against Amazon. Ricard Bellera, CCOO Secretary for Work and Economy in Catalonia, told Business Insider the union had asked the judge to seize both the 51-page report covered by El Diario and any documents showing any agreement between Castor and Pollux and Amazon. So, yeah. I mean, this is no surprise. They just naturally want to break unions and, yeah. This reeks of the robber baron era, the Gilded Age, that sort of thing. Carnegie, J.P. Morgan, all that. Just more so, right? Because now, as we're seeing, corporations are starting to assert their dominance in the world order, the global order, and eventually there will be a point where they'll have more control and power than the government itself. And I guess that's just what we're heading towards. But, we see these spies and these intimidation tactics, because I'm sure there's other methods that they use to break up unions and make sure that they don't come together. Like, there was one instance where I was working at a restaurant and I was kind of joking. I didn't say it, but I was kind of just saying like, we should start a union. But I kind of realized that I probably should shut up because, like a restaurant servers union, that could go well. They'll just shut it down. Like, they'll fire everybody and rehire some, 18-year-old who just wants to get paid, right? And that's what they do. That's their tactic. Because they know that these people are desperate. So you're replaceable, and they'll just hire somebody who's willing to shut up and willing to do whatever they need to do to get paid. Like, I've had multiple people tell me, "Oh, you should go work at this Amazon warehouse. I mean, they pay good money," or I don't know. They entice you with the money, and it's really hard to explain to them, like, I don't want to work in the modern equivalent of of coal mine, which of course is not. Of course, working in a coal mine, that's I kind of have to respect it, because that's a very different line of work. But coal mine, in the respect of the megacorp, you're expendable. There could be some kind of accident, some drone forklift can run over my leg, and that's it. Oh well, you're done for. All these different human rights abuses that you hear about, and why would I want to be a part of that? And of course, people that are working there, they just need to work and then they get paid. But that's what they do. They put people in the position where they got to do whatever work they need to do to get the money, and if they got to throw away their own self-respect and their own standards for work, so be it. I'm getting paid, so I might as well be grateful. And this is what happens with the corporations continuing to seize power, The rich get richer, the middle class shrinks. So what's left is you got the working poor that are just working to get by, and then you have the ultra rich that are reaping the benefits and reaping the profits off of that. Oh, I work for this. Oh. And yeah. You see a lot of people, they it's entirely lost on them that they're creating a neo-feudalistic system. Like they openly are okay with the fact that we have indentured servants, and that's perfectly acceptable. Even though, they deserve to be in that position because they're poor, and if you're poor, then you must have done something, and you got what you get what you fucking deserve. Or anyway, so it's just a lot of elitist, classist entitlement. Definitely people looking down on you. Again, I can see people looking down on me, especially if I drop out, looking down on me because, you didn't get your degree, and everything, you deserve everything that you get, or I don't know, they're just trying to feel good. It's really just a way for them to feel good about themselves and their position in life, because their lives are so empty. So they have to look at somebody who is doing worse than them, so they can be like, well, at least I'm not like them, because they're fucked up, and they got what they, yeah. So there was that. But yes, Pinkerton spies, union busting, and just other workers, worker issues. So there's that. In Spain. So I wanted to talk about like that domestic area, and I wanted to go into the more international subjects, and I wanted to touch up on a bit of a development which is kind of it kind of went under the rug for a lot of people, and this is certainly more important than people are giving it credit, but I want to just talk about it real quick or highlight it. I just find it very interesting that this concerns the death of an Iranian scientist, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. I hope I said that right. And he was assassinated. He was the head of the nuclear program, and he was assassinated by an unknown entity, unknown group. Iran believes Israel may have had a part to do with it. I just find it interesting that we started the year almost going to war with Iran, and it appears that we might be ending the year trying to start a war with Iran. Like, they really want to settle with Iran right now. So, reading this from the BBC, Iran believes Israel and an exiled opposition group used a remote-controlled weapon to shoot dead top nuclear scientist Mohsen on Friday. Security Chief Ali Shamkhani said the attackers used electronic equipment when Mohsen's car was fired on east of the capital of Tehran. He was speaking at a funeral of the scientists Israel accused of secretly helping to develop nuclear weapons. Israel has not publicly commented on the allegations of its involvement. In the early 2000s, Mohsen played a crucial role in Iran's nuclear program, but the government insists its nuclear activities are entirely peaceful. It has been subjected to crippling Western sanctions aimed at preventing it from developing nuclear weapons. How did he die? So Iranian versions of what happened have changed significantly, but it appears that he was mortally wounded when his car was sprayed with bullets in the town of Absard, to the east of Tehran. During the attack, a bomb in a Nissan pickup truck was also reported to have exploded. Pictures on social media showed a road strewn with wreckage and blood, and a bullet-ridden vehicle. First, the defense ministry reported a gunfight between his bodyguards and several gunmen. One Iranian reported, quote, "Witnesses are saying 3 to 4 individuals who said to have been terrorists were killed." Then Iranian media said the scientists had in fact been killed by a remote-controlled machine gun or weapons controlled by satellite. And on Monday, Rear Admiral Shamkhani, who heads the Supreme National Security Council, confirmed it had been a remote attack using special methods. So this is a bit of an assassination, Black Ops style. with the Call of Duty game that came out. So very reminiscent there. But yes, the scientist was killed, and they're saying it was terrorists. They're saying it's Israel. Who knows? I could definitely see Israel doing something like this, but again, nothing is confirmed, so we don't know. But yeah, this is an interesting development. And we have this assassination that took part that happened, but then we also have the proposed withdrawal of troops from the Middle East, and we have a carrier group in the Gulf, actually, the Persian Gulf, to assist in that withdrawal. So it's very interesting movement of troops and moves that we're making in that region, and that can put Iran on edge, and who knows what can happen. It's just, this is a basket case. This is a powder keg. This is a barrel of monkeys, whatever you want to call it. This is just, again, on the issue of withdrawing troops, we just need to get out. You could say, well, if we withdraw, it's going to cause a purge of some kind. It's going to happen regardless. If at whatever point we withdraw, there's going to be a purge. So I don't know what to do. I mean, we're just going to keep occupying these countries forever. So, yeah. And of course, we continue with these wars of aggression, these occupations. Meanwhile, our own country is deteriorating. Historically, endless wars is the downfall of every empire. So, yeah. But we have that in Iran, and we'll just have to follow up on updates there. But I just wanted to speak on that real quick because, we have these operations and these black op operations, and it's just, we don't know. We don't know what could have happened. Anything could have happened. It could have been anybody. It could have been the Iranians, just trying to create a situation that it looks like they're under attack when really they're just trying to get rid of, someone. Who knows? It could be anything. But we'll just have to see what unfolds. So that's with Iran. And wanted to talk about a series of demonstrations in France. Now, France, when folks riot and protest there, they're not playing. So I have to respect them in that area because they're not backing down. It doesn't seem like it. I talk about Antifa here in the U.S. At least when the French are out in the streets wrecking shop and causing a scene. I mean, I'm not French, so I can't speak on it from personal experience. But it certainly feels like when they do it, it's for the right reasons. And they're really sending a message like, do not mess with us. Again, I defend France a lot. And people like to make jokes about, they surrender and that. But dude, they have pound for pound, historically, the best military in Europe. People hate on Napoleon, but you can't just ignore what he did. He overcame a lot, even though he did lose in the end. And of course, France just had. Anyway, this speaks to how terrible our education system is, because I didn't realize the amount of revolutions and overthrow of power and the amount that the French people, when they talk about freedom, liberté, and revolution, they're serious. And they've done it. They've done it more than once. So we got to check ourselves because we're complacent. We talk about freedom, but we're complacent. There's no way. I mean, it's not even close. But anyway, again, it's hard to compare the two countries because we're entirely different culture, different history. But we really rip on them. And I think it secretly has to do because we're a bit jealous. And I think the French kind of know that, like, ho, you Americans, or, I don't know. I would like to visit France, but then you hear some things and, it's like, I don't want to have to go to France and then people poke fun at me for being an American, where I'm like, dude, I secretly agree with you, or something like that. Anyway, yes, this concerns the security bill that is being proposed in France. And so initially what it was is they had all these articles, and the major article that people were out in the streets for was basically prohibiting filming of police with malicious intent. But then, how do when you make a claim like that, then you can get arrested by any cop for filming. Because, I feel that they're going to use that information against me or something. So they're prohibiting the ability of the citizenry to film and monitor the police. Meanwhile, with this also security bill, they were going to expand surveillance. So ultimately, they were just expanding surveillance and trying to attack journalism or other forms of holding authority to account. And then, of course, people went on the street. I believe now they're going to try to make some rewrites or try to re-release it, but still that it's not enough, and they're going to keep rioting and protesting there. So this is an ongoing situation, but I want to talk real quick. Quoting from BBC, dozens of protesters have clashed with police in the French capital, Paris, in fresh demonstrations against a controversial draft security law. Police fired tear gas after hooded protesters smashed shop windows and set several vehicles alight. Nearly 100 rallies were planned nationwide on Saturday over the draft bill that would outlaw taking photos of police with malevolent intent. Opponents say the bill undermines press freedom to document police brutality. France has seen weekly nationwide protests over the draft bill, which intensified after footage emerged of 3 white policemen racially abusing and beating a black music producer. Macron calls it a shame about the police beating. Responding to the backlash, President Emmanuel Macron's ruling party said last week that parts of the law would be rewritten. However, this has not done enough to assuage its opponents. On Friday, Mr. Macron acknowledged there are police who are violent and said that they need to be punished in a live interview with Brut, a youth-focused news portal site. What happened Saturday? Thousands of people, including members of the anti-government Yellow Vest movement, had been marching peacefully in the street when pockets of protesters dressed in black and with their face covered started launching projectiles at riot police, Reuters reports. The windows of a supermarket, property agency, and bank were smashed, according to the AFP news agency, and police responded to the violence by firing tear gas. Some of the demonstrators set impromptu barricades in the street, which they set on fire, it added. Paris police, quoted by BFM TV, said that some 500 rioters had infiltrated the protest. Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin said 22 people had been detained over the incidents. Police had been heavily deployed to the capital in a bid to avoid a repeat of the violent clashes seen there last weekend over the same law, which left dozens wounded. Yeah, so those protests were intense, and it's, again, seeing this riot footage and the police and the protesters, rioters clashing in the streets is the closest we're getting to watching an all-out medieval battle. And yeah, it's just intense to see and crazy to watch, and they don't play, man. It's wild. But as I said, they try to have a peaceful rally, and then some people infiltrated. So it's, again, when it comes to property damage, I'm not all for it. I'm like, yes, I'm not all for it unless it's specifically targeted, And even saying stuff like this could get me in trouble. But if you have specific targets that are not focused towards the people, but focused towards whichever group is, whether it be corporations or banks, whichever one is having control over your lives, and that's another thing. You can be a revolutionary, just don't be a bully, if that makes sense. So don't try to, if you're trying to fight for the people, then don't try to ruin their businesses or, try to bully them into submission. That's a bit counterintuitive, but yeah. So we've had protests there, having to deal with that. So they've been dealing there. So France is probably another, as long as this draft bill is still in the docket, they're going to have protests and riots there. So I did want to talk about, kind of underreported, but a crisis developing in Ethiopia. So it appears that there's a ethnic conflict, civil war that's starting to break out, and it could threaten the region, the greater region in general. So, yeah. So, reading from Al Jazeera. On Sunday, Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed announced the end of the government's military offenses on Tigray after Tigrayan forces withdrew from the regional capital, Mekelle. I cannot pronounce that, sorry. What's it called? Gebre Michael, who leads, Debretsion, who leads the regional state in the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, however, said in a phone interview with the Associated Press a day later that the fighting still continues and his forces have made some gains. The Tigrayan leader said the fight is about self-determination of the Tigrayan community, which constitutes 7.3% of the 108 million Ethiopian population, and it will continue until the invaders are out. Indeed, despite Abiy's declaration of victory, the deadly conflict in northern Ethiopia, which started on November 4th, is far from over. Despite the communications blockade the federal state imposed on the region since the beginning of the conflict, there are credible reports of ongoing clashes between the Ethiopian army and Tigrayan forces across the region. Moreover, some of Ethiopia's neighbors got heavily involved in the conflict, adding weight to the fears that the civil war could soon devastate and destabilize not only the country itself, but the entire Horn of Africa region. Eritrea, which became a staunch ally of Ethiopia's federal government after the 2018 peace deal between the two countries, is supporting the military offensive on Tigray, not only politically but also militarily. There have been multiple reports of bombs originating from Eritrea hitting targets in Tigray region, and human rights organizations have claimed that Eritrean conscripts are fighting against the Tigrayan forces. Ethiopia's government denied direct Eritrean involvement in the conflict, but has admitted that it occasionally used Eritrean territory to target Tigrayan forces. Since the beginning of the conflict, the Tigrayan forces have fired multiple missiles onto the Eritrean capital, Asmara, and the airports of Bahir Dar and Gondar and Amhara regional state. In retribution, Eritreans' involvement in the war is far from surprising. The TPLF has been the leading force in the Ethiopian government throughout its 2-decade war with Eritrea, and distrust between Mekelle and Asmara remained strong even after the signing of the peace deal between the two nations concluded under the patronage of the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, and with the support of the Trump administration. While Eritrea is already a major player in the conflict, it is unlikely to remain as the only foreign force involved or affected by this war in the coming days and months. The trilateral agreement signed earlier this week between Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Somalia to establish a common security front, for example, could eventually pull Mogadishu into this war as well. Addis Abeba's assault on Tigray is also expected to have a significant negative impact on neighboring Sudan, a country that is already facing multiple humanitarian political transition challenges. Since the beginning of the conflict, tens of thousands of Tigrayan refugees have arrived in Sudan, and many more are expected to make the same journey in the coming days and weeks. This means the Sudanese government will need to provide accommodation, food, and medical services to these peoples amid a pandemic and growing economic crisis. Moreover, the militarization of the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden started long before Ethiopia's civil war, and the region is now an important battleground for global strategic competition. The armed conflict in Ethiopia will undoubtedly be seen as an opportunity by many actors in the region to expand their influence. At the moment, the United States going through a difficult presidential transition and the COVID pandemic raging on, global powers and multilateral organizations are paying little attention to the rising tensions in the Horn of Africa. This could speed up the internationalization of Ethiopia's civil war and eventually transform it into a protracted conflict involving multiple state and non-state actors. That was a bit of a read, but I wanted to at least illustrate, because this is a bit underreported, depending on how, if this is something that you actually pay attention to, then okay, great. But this is one of those situations that is going to spiral out of control, and once it gets really bad, people are going to finally pay attention. Like, what's happening? But yeah, this is deep ethnic tensions and issues, along with just other geopolitical and yeah, this looks like it's gonna get bad. Again, I don't. Again, I can make all these predictions about things deteriorating. Because we looked at the Armenian-Azerbaijan conflict there, which they've been able to make an agreement. I'm sure there's been some violation there eventually, but it seems like the fighting has slowed down there. But then we see something like this happening, which could easily rope in all these different powers in the region and destabilize it. And it has greater implications because it's close to, these shipping lanes. And so, yeah, that's something to pay attention here. But yeah, just want to talk about it. And I just find it interesting because it's a bit of an ethnic conflict. And we're seeing a lot of these ethnic conflicts starting to brew up. I was reading something also about the Balkans and involving the Serbs, and yeah, it really shows the tribalization that humans go through, where if times are tough, we just stick with our own kind, no matter what just happens. We just stick with our own. It's basically like, because you think of it as, when you think of it as sports, right? Everybody has a jersey, a color, right? So if there's a global battle royale and every man's for himself, then you kind of just stick with the people that kind of look like you and talk like you and, at least, believe culturally, right, the same things as you. Yeah. Humans, we just resort back to our we like to think we're so advanced, and we're not. It doesn't take much for us to resort back to those that primitive mindset, sticking with your own kind, sticking with your race or something like that. It's, yeah, like when you study like prisons, right, in that environment, the sociology of prisons, and this is the closest really you're gonna get to seeing people. Well, it's mainly men, but looking at human beings in a primordial mindset of just survival. Then you see where they stick around and what they have to do and how they rationalize certain behavior. Again, I didn't mean to get weird like that, but yeah, this is Ethiopia is one of those countries that I would like to study more, but I'm certain that given their history, this is not something new for them, ethnic and civil conflicts. So it's just in this situation, it feels like it could spiral out of control. But it's just something to pay attention to for now. So yeah, so I did want to talk about not necessarily any. It doesn't have to do with war or anything like that. It's more like an economic, food sort of story. So Singapore has just approved the selling of laboratory grown meat. So reading from CNN, Singapore has granted San Francisco startup Eat Just Incorporated regulatory approval to sell its laboratory grown chicken in the city-state, the world's first government to allow the sale of cultured meat. The product, created from cultured chicken cells, has been approved as an ingredient in chicken bites, following Singapore Food Agency approval. Eat Just said Tuesday. Initially, the chicken bites will debut in a Singapore restaurant, with plans for wider expansion into dining and retail establishments in the country. Josh Tetrick, co-founder and CEO of Eat Just, told CNN Business the product will be priced at parity with premium chicken. He added, "We have been eating meat for many hundreds, thousands of years, always needing to kill an animal to eat until now," he said. "The cultured meat is created in a bioreactor, an apparatus in which a biological reaction or change takes place." Eat Just said it has a high protein content and a rich source of minerals. According to the company, which plans to sell the product under the Good Meat brand, for now, the manufacturing hub in Singapore and Northern California, the company only has approval to sell the meat in Singapore, but it hopes to expand sales of cultured meat, including cultured beef, into the US and Western Europe. Tetrick said, Eat Just already produces a range of non-animal products such as just egg, made with mung beans and vegan mayonnaise. So this is interesting. With they're slowly starting to roll it out, the cultured meat, and effectively changing the game in terms of growing meat, right? And given because we've read reports about the agricultural farming and how that's going to be affected in the future, soil fertility, water, all that good stuff. So this could certainly be the start of manufacturing food and lab-grown food, meats, and effectively, kind of like Soylent Green, right? Because once the agricultural industries start collapsing, once farming and all that starts to go south, we're going to have to resort to food like this. And that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, the growing food is going to be a major issue in terms of collapse. So if we can start moving more towards lab-grown foods, cultured meats, then, so long as it's not going to have some adverse effect on our body, who knows about that, but that could be a start to maybe reduce the cattle industry, because that's a major source of carbon emissions, methane emissions. But then again, these industries, they're very powerful. So it's probably another reason why it hasn't really taken off yet, because these corporations, they don't want that competition there, because, I don't know about the cost benefits there, but it's just, they see something that's new and that could threaten their profits, so they do whatever they can to make sure that it doesn't take off or doesn't, go anywhere, even if it's a better solution. And I can certainly see, I don't know, I think for whatever reason, even if they go ahead with this, I think vegans are still going to rationalize not eating the meat, even though it's nothing had to die. Oh, it's still living tissue, and okay, but nothing had to die. It's just grown. Anyway, you do you. So that's something interesting there. Interesting in the sense of growing food and supplying nutrition, especially considering that, we're going to experience a food shortage probably next year. I have all this food stocked up and I'm trying to eat into it so I can, make some space and room. But, we're in a position where food insecurity is going to become a problem, especially in our country, right? We hit 30,000 on the Dow, but people are still lining up, especially in Texas. They're still lining up for food and pantries and all that. So we can talk about, communism and the breadlines, but we already have ours here, right? So anyway, so there's that in Singapore. And I want to move on with some interesting stories out of Brazil. Of course, Brazil, in terms of collapse, is up there, right? My top 3 for collapse at the moment is the United States, Brazil, and South Africa. Those are kind of like my top 3. So Brazil has been having some interesting developments, right? So I was reading about, in Brazil, there was a series of raids by these bandits. They shut down an entire city, and they just did raids on these banks. Some crazy stuff. Brazil is the Wild West, man. It really is. So I'm reading this from Morning Journal News. Dozens of gunmen armed with assault rifles invaded a city in southern Brazil overnight Tuesday and took control of the streets as they assaulted a local bank. Video broadcasts on the global television network showed hooded men dressed in black walking the streets of Criciúma in the state of Santa Catarina, and local residents being held hostage during the takeover, which began around midnight and lasted almost 2 hours. Shots echoed across the city of some 220,000 people. At least 30 assailants and 10 cars were involved in a well-planned operation. Anselmo Cruz, head of the state's police robbery and kidnapping department, told a news conference speaking alongside the governor and the mayor. They blocked access to the city, including with burning vehicles, to prevent police reinforcements from responding swiftly, and deployed explosives in the robbery. The gunmen traded fire with police in the city center and at a police station. Santa Catarina's military police said on their official Twitter account. 2 people were wounded in the firefight. A security guard and a police officer who was shot in the abdomen and remained hospitalized in serious condition Tuesday. Quote, "It was an unprecedented action for the state. There was never anything with this scope, this violence," Cruz said. End quote. Cruz said in a separate interview with Global News. The television network quoted him as saying, "The robbers fired bullets with calibers capable of downing a helicopter." Images of Global showed a bank vault with square-shaped hole in a convoy of criminals' vehicles as they made their escape. Bills were scattered across the ground in one area of the city, and newspaper Folha de Sao Paulo reported that the police arrested several people who collected 810,000 reais, or $150,000 worth of the notes. Police later located the attackers' vehicles in a cornfield of a neighboring municipality. Some of the cars' interiors were stained with blood, indicating some of the gunmen had been hit by police bullets. Yeah. So they had this huge fight, or this huge raid, right, with these bank robbers. It went into the city. But yeah, I think in one image also I saw one guy just walking around with an RPG. Like, these guys were seriously armed. Brazil is just another level, right? That the citizens were on lockdown, the city was effectively under siege, and they started raiding these banks. Yeah, this is life in Brazil, I guess. And then, so we had these bank robberies and the city being shut down. And then I wanted to talk about another story about a Brazilian state effectively in a state of collapse. It's falling apart. So, reading from Associated Press, the Brazilian state of Amapá suffers a power blackout for days. Quote, "A fire at an electricity substation has caused 4 days of blackouts in most of northern Brazil's Amapá state, disrupting the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. The outage began Tuesday night when a fire damaged a transformer, interrupting the power supply to 13 of the state's 16 municipalities, including the capital of Macapá. The state government said Amapá, the state on Brazil's border with French Guiana, has a total of 850,000 residents. Nearly 90% of Amapá's population was still without power on Friday morning, according to the state's communications secretary. Thousands of people lined up to fill water jugs and tanks at places in the capital where supplies were still available. According to images shown in local press, most of the population was without telephone service or internet access. In several markets in the capital, there were long lines to buy bottled water and candles. In many establishments, the products were sold out. At gasoline stations, dozens of cars waited to fill up their cars, fearing a shortage. Authorities are seeking to sustain power supply to ailing hospitals with generators. Bento Albuquerque, the mines and energy minister, said Friday he expects supplies to be fully restored in 10 days. Amapá's sole high-voltage transmission line connected the state to the national grid in 2015. The fire caused the disconnection of Amapá from the regional line and 2 hydroelectric plants, the state government said. Brazil's government has launched an investigation into the causes of the incident, Mines and Energy Minister said. So, yeah, this was in November 6th, so maybe they've done some things to make it better, deal with that, but yeah. Brazil is just in a state of degradation, and it doesn't seem like the best place to live right now. Yeah, it's kind of funny because I see a lot of memes, and I see all the different, take him to Brazil memes, and yeah, people just, no, don't take me to Brazil. It's just, yeah, it's a wild place to live, I bet. I know a lot of, I shouldn't say I know a lot of Brazilians. The ones that I have met, they're great people, very funny, but I would like to get their opinion on this and what they think, because especially with the President Bolsonaro, you could be talking to one person and he, and they'll say, oh, he's a devil, which he kind of is. He's a bad president, but oh, he's the devil and this and that, and then you can talk to somebody else and they're the Brazilian equivalent of a Trump supporter. Oh, he's the best, and he make Brazil great again. Like, so who knows? Who knows there? So I'll just have to talk with somebody about that. But I did want to speak on just another kind of movement that's breaking out in India. This is a bit underreported. It's effectively a strike that's happening, nationwide strike, and it's because India is a large country, big country, 1 billion people. So when they have a movement like this, it's going to have millions of people. And I read one report saying like 250 million people were participating in this strike, which is unprecedented. That's like the largest demonstration in human history, really. But when I was trying to look this up, you wouldn't really find any American sources on this. Barely. Maybe I have to do some more digging, but I kind of think they don't want to report on this because they don't want to give Americans any idea. They don't want to inspire some movements here, right? Which they absolutely, there should be a strike here, but people are so desperate for work that they can't afford a week off and lose their job and whatever. So reading from Al Jazeera, the Indian government and protesting farmers were unable to break their deadlock in talks, with farmers saying on Saturday they will intensify their demonstrations against new agricultural laws and continue blocking key highways on the outskirts of the capital. Protest leaders rejected the government's offer to amend some contentious provisions of the new farm laws, which deregulate crop pricing, and stuck to the demand for a total repeal. They also announced a nationwide strike for Tuesday. They said they would intensify their agitation and occupy toll plazas across the country on the strike day if the government didn't abolish the laws. The two sides will meet for further discussions on Wednesday. Thousands of farmers are protesting against reforms that they say could devastate crop prices and reduce their earnings. They have blocked highways on the outskirts of Delhi for the last 10 days. The farmers say the laws will lead the government to stop buying grain at minimum guaranteed prices and results in exploitation by corporations that will push prices down. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government insists the reforms will benefit farmers. It says they will allow farmers to market their produce and boost production through private investment, but farmers say that they will never consulted. Saturday's talks between Agriculture Minister Narendra Singh Tomar and 35 farm leaders were the fifth since the laws were passed in September. Maybe a little bit further. Quote, "We had a very good discussion today and we wanted a clear solution, but it was not possible," Tomar said after 5 hours of discussions. "We will continue all the demands they have made and we will reach a solution." We assured them minimum support prices for crops will stay. However, the leader of the Farmers Union was quoted by the DPA news agency as saying that the government offered amendments to the law, but we want them repealed, and if new laws are made, they must be done with the consultation of farmers' associations. The farmers are camping along at these 5 main highways on the outskirts of the National Capital Territory and have said they will not leave until the government rolls back what they claim the black laws. Farmers in the northern state of Punjab and Haryana have been protesting against the laws for nearly 2 months. The situation escalated last week when tens of thousands marched to New Delhi and clashed with the police on the outskirts. So this is kind of like a pro-farmer, pro-worker sort of movement protest. I saw one video where they were kind of waving around the hammer and sickle flag, all that good stuff. So it's a bit interesting to see that there. That kind of socialist, left-leaning kind of movement, imagery, and so that's happening there. But I got to do a little more research on this. It's just kind of saw that there were some protests, but it definitely has to deal with food pricing, farmers, and agriculture. I mean, there are other issues to talk about in terms of agriculture in Asia, which I'll have to highlight later on. But this is a bit interesting to see this intense movement, and especially considering, because I wouldn't consider India to be that left-leaning whatsoever. So to see this is very interesting and promising. So yeah. So that is the international segment that I wanted to talk on. And yeah, just to touch up on some global issues, geopolitics. So we'll move on with the natural world and the breakdown of nature, mass extinction, climate change, you name it, we're talking about it. So I wanted to talk about, and my only Patreon, but he kind of pointed out this story about Somalia and the cyclone that they experienced there. So I'm reading this from NPR on November 22nd. And this tropical cyclone, Gadi, is the strongest cyclone ever measured in northern India and made landfall in Somalia, which is really like, I don't know if it was the first recorded storm, but it certainly is the strongest recorded storm in Somalia, and effectively dropped 2 years worth of rain in like basically 2 days time. So it made landfall in Somalia at 105 miles per hour. Yeah, it is the first recorded instance of a hurricane strength system hitting the country. At one point before landfall, the winds were measured at 115. I'm reading this from NPR. Quote, Gadi is the strongest tropical cyclone that has ever been recorded in this region of the globe, further south than any Category 3 equivalent cyclone in the northern Indian Ocean, said Sam Lilo, a researcher with the National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration's Physical Science Laboratories. Its intensification from about 40 miles per hour to 150 miles per hour was the largest 12-hour increase on record for a tropical cyclone in the Indian Ocean. So not only was this like the first recorded hurricane storm to hit Somalia, but this was rapid intensification, a bit unprecedented for northern India, or the Indian Ocean, I should say. Again, climate change, warming oceans, that's really the deal here, but it's just showing you where it's just hitting and it's affecting everywhere. By the way, we did end our hurricane season, so I have to keep an eye on, see if any other storm kind of breaks up, but it appears that we're through. So we'll have to see what the next hurricane season brings, because that might be worse. Who knows? So, reading further, quote, with climate change, we're seeing warmer ocean temperatures and more moist atmosphere that's leading to a greater chance of rapid intensification for tropical cyclones like Gadi. Meteorologist and climate journalist Eric Holthaus told NPR, Gadi's strength is part of the broader global pattern of stronger storms, and those storms are leading to a lot more rain. Northern Somalia usually gets about 4 inches of rain per year. Data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administrations show Gadi could bring 8 inches over the next 2 days, 2 years worth of rainfall in just 2 days. Some isolated areas could see even more than that. So I haven't really seen any images out of that area or what effects that it had. Who knows? Because it might be a lot of rain, but these sort of areas, they're not used to it. That's the thing. So like even if it's 8 inches, that could cause a lot of damage, especially in an area where the infrastructure isn't up to par, or people are living in mud huts, or, I don't want to generalize over Somalia, but it's not exactly the most developed area on the planet. So this kind of storm could do some damage, although I don't know if they did. I don't know what happened, so I'll have to look into that more. But it certainly is interesting to see this weather activity and these kind of storms occurring. And they're also pointing to not just this is the first recorded storm, but just the rapid intensification, the rate of increase and the effects there, because they're pointing towards warmer oceans and moisture in the atmosphere. So there's that. So we can look at this storm and the effects there, but it's all linked, right? So we have this rapid intensification, and then we also look at the Arctic sea ice, the shrinking of that, and they're pointing to our shrinking Arctic ice and the weather patterns affected there, ocean temperature, currents, the jet stream, and how that's affecting other events. And they're pointing to a link towards the dust storms that we saw. People have such short attention spans. They completely missed the fact that we had a dust storm that blocked out the sun for at least a week. So, reading this from kpbs.org, San Diego researchers say a massive African dust storm that crossed the Atlantic last summer may be linked to melting Arctic sea ice. The huge storm put a hazy blanket over much of the American South and West this past summer. Scripps Institution of Oceanography scientist Amato Evan was part of a team that found melting sea ice is raising temperatures and that is disrupting global weather patterns. One impact of the changing climate is the weather system that generating strong winds and held the subtropical high pressure storm system in place for more than a week. Those factors created conditions that greatly enhanced the reach of the dust storm. What we are doing is an uncontrolled experiment on the planet Earth, and so we really don't know what all these impacts are going to be. Evans said, whether they're positive or negative, the fact that it's an uncontrolled experiment seems pretty risky. The decline in Arctic sea ice is changing global weather patterns in ways researchers do not entirely understand. However, Evans said the chance for even more frequent massive dust storms goes up the more the climate warms. As the Arctic starts to warm up faster, for example, the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Africa, we're changing the temperature gradient. Evans said, we're changing the difference in temperature between Africa or the Atlantic Ocean or the Arctic, and we're making the differences weaker. And when we start making that difference weaker, it has a big impact on the circulation of the atmosphere. Evans called the storm another example of climate-fueled extreme weather. Yeah, so again, it's a balance, temperature balance, convection, all that good stuff, and we don't know exactly what it could lead to, and it could be unmitigated, and it could cause all sorts of wackiness, and yeah, but just dust storms in general, that's going to be more of an issue that we have to deal with, contend with, and yeah, we'll have to see how that unfolds, but it's again just a trend of extreme weather patterns, and people want to say, oh, well, what about that climate change, global warming, we're heading into winter, how about it? Yeah, it's global warming, right? But also has to deal more with just weather patterns and how unpredictable it is. And we had a couple weeks of we had a burn ban, right? We just had a burn ban here, and then we had some rain. So over the course of a couple days, all this rain came through, and then we had an extreme temperature change, and now, of course, the ban was lifted. But it's just the fact that you might be sitting here and it might be warm, 80 degrees in November. So you're like, oh, I want this cold to come in. And then the cold comes in, it gets really cold, and now you want it to warm up. So yeah, it's just when the weather changes, when that pattern changes, it's drastic. So there's that to deal with. So the weather patterns there. So I kind of wanted to talk a little about something. I wasn't sure exactly where to put this under, so I just decided to put on the natural. But it concerns a Japanese capsule with asteroid samples that landed in Australia, and it certainly is an interesting. Yeah, it's nice to see, with all the bleakness in the world, some advancement in technology and requiring resources, because when it comes to space mining, I don't really have much of an issue with it, because it's space, nobody really owns it, and it's essentially devoid of life, so you're not really, you still want ethics involved, obviously, but I would much rather have us exploit the natural resources on the galaxy, where we have literally infinite possibilities to exploit resources, where on our planet Earth, it typically can't be recouped, or it can't be recovered. So so this is reading from Associated Press. So a Japanese capsule carrying the world's first asteroid subsurface samples shot across the night atmosphere early Sunday before landing in the remote Australian outback. completing a mission to provide clues to the origin of the solar system and life on Earth. The spacecraft Hayabusa 2 released a small capsule on Saturday and sent it toward Earth to deliver samples from a distant asteroid at about 10 kilometers, 6 miles above ground. A parachute was opened to slow its fall, and beacon signals were transmitted to indicate its location in the sparsely populated area of Woomera in southern Australia. About 2 hours after the re-entry, the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, or JAXA, said its helicopter search team found the capsule in the planned landing area. The retrieval of the pan-shaped capsule, about 40 centimeters, 15 inches in diameter, was completed after another 2 hours. The capsule collection work at the landing site was complete, the agency said in a tweet. We practiced a lot for today. It ended safe. The capsule's return came weeks after NASA's OSIRIS-REx spacecraft made a successful touch and go grab of surface samples from the asteroid Bennu. China, meanwhile, announced last week that its lunar lander collected underground samples and sealed them within the spacecraft for return to Earth. As space developing nations compete in their missions, Thomas Zurbuchen, a Swiss-American astrophysicist and the Associate Administrator of NASA's Science Mission Directorate, congratulated the Japanese Space Agency and the many individuals in Japan and beyond who made this possible. Together we'll gain a better understanding of the origins of our solar system and the source of water and organic molecules that may have seeded life on Earth, Zurbuchen wrote on Twitter. The fireball could be seen even from the International Space Station. A Japanese astronaut, Soichi Noguchi, who is now on a 6-month mission there, tweeted, "Just spotted Hayabusa 2 from the ISS. Unfortunately not bright enough for a handheld camera, but enjoyed watching capsule." Hayabusa 2 left the asteroid Ryugu about 300 million kilometers, 180 million miles away a year ago. After it released the capsule on Saturday, it set off on a new expedition to another distant asteroid. Yeah, this is a nice development at least, and they're it's more like a scientific expedition and trying to discover organic molecules, but this certainly is a step forward in terms of mining and prospecting and seeing what kind of minerals and resources are there. And again, I'm okay with this. I'm okay with the if we have to get minerals or precious metals from asteroids, I'm okay with that. Because if you want to talk about capitalism, there are infinite possibilities there. And that should be the next area where these corporations and these mining companies, if they really want to make some profits, this is the step to go. Because, they really want to stay on Earth, but, you're going to destroy the planet. Meanwhile, you have all these floating rocks, infinite amount of rocks that you could just exploit and mine there. Again, it's, we're not at that stage just yet, but it's getting there. And I have no problems really with it. But but this was a bit of a scientific, experiment, trying to find natural organic molecules. And yeah, the theory of panspermia is interesting. So it would be nice if we could see, possible organic molecules and how that could have affected our evolution or the beginning of life. So there's that. So that's nice. This asteroid did land in Australia. And I did want to speak on Australia in another sense, given that we're on our side of the planet, we're experiencing our winter. They're just now heading into their summers, and already we're getting the record heat and the fires. And as we saw last summer, Australia burned to the ground. So we'll see what happens with this summer and what their experiences are. But yeah, so reading from CNN, firefighters in Australia are battling a massive bushfire that has been burning out of control for 6 weeks across the popular tourist spot of Fraser Island, as parts of the country's east swelter through a record-breaking heat wave following the hottest November on record. Tourists and staff on the UNESCO World Heritage Site have been forced to evacuate as the fire closes in on local attractions and the island's unique forests are smothered in smoke. On Tuesday morning local time, fire and emergency services in the eastern state of Queensland issued a prepare-to-leave warning for the Kingfisher Bay Resort and village on the island as blazes in several locations threatened the area. Emergency crews used water bombs to slow the blaze, but the fire service warned conditions could get worse. Fire crews are working to contain the fire, but firefighters may not be able to protect every property. You should not expect a firefighter at your door, the directive said. The Queensland Bureau of Meteorology said the fire danger is likely to be exacerbated by strong winds and extreme heat conditions, which are forecast to continue in the state for the next few days. The blaze on Fraser Island was sparked by an illegal campfire. In 6 weeks, it has torn through 76,000 hectares of bone-dry bushland, according to the CNN affiliate 9 News. Also known by its indigenous people as Kagari, the island was listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1992 for its unique forests and natural beauty. It is the world's largest sand island and has the only tall rainforest that grows on sand. But the makeup of the sand island was making work difficult for the more than 30 crews fighting the blaze on the island, the Queensland Fire Service said. Incident controller James Haig said in a video message posted to Twitter that conditions are very challenging, but firefighters were doing their absolute best to try to mitigate the damage caused by the fire this large. The crews are also battling fires in dozens of other areas on mainland Queensland and New South Wales. So, again, they're dealing. They're going right back into the last season with fires, record heat. So, good luck to them, just having to deal with that. But this is just getting warmed up. No pun intended. Oh, geez, no pun intended. But, yeah, this, again, this is just going to be another trend of heat, storms, and devastation there. And, best of luck to them. But it's going to be rough. It's going to be very rough for the next, for this summer for them. So, yeah. So I wanted to talk about something else. I don't know if this is exactly natural, but I feel like I had to discuss it somewhere. So it concerns the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, which is the largest telescope on the planet. And yeah, the telescope collapsed and basically destroyed itself. So reading this from NBC, Genesis Ferrer had dreamed of working in the Arecibo Observatory ever since she first met some of its astrophysicists during a high school trip in Puerto Rico. After hearing them use the terms such as radiation and emissions, Ferrer, 21, said that she fell in love with the entire idea of being able to understand things so far away. Like many scientists in the U.S. territory, Ferrer can trace back her interest in astrophysics, biophysics, and space to that school trip. The fourth-year physics students from the University of Puerto Rico, Rio Piedras campus, had recently earned a fellowship from the Puerto Rico NASA Space Consortium to study emissions from red dwarf stars using the giant radio telescope in Arecibo. Because of the coronavirus restrictions, Ferrer has been accessing the data she needs from the Arecibo Observatory remotely, hoping she would soon be able to finish her investigation in the place where it all started. Those hopes faded away Tuesday morning when the Arecibo Observatory collapsed. The telescope's 900-ton receiver platform and the Gregorian Dome, a structure as tall as a 4-story building that houses secondary reflectors, fell into the northern portion of the vast reflector dish more than 400 feet below after the main cables holding up the structures broke overnight. And there's some videos of it, pretty dramatic, but basically the whole receiver just collapsed. Quote, "It was very sad, very disappointed. I was very sad, very disappointed," Ferrer told NBC News, I worked so hard to finally get accepted to work in the Arecibo Observatory, and now that I got accepted, I can't work in it. I felt very sad, not only individually, but I also saw it as a very sad thing for Puerto Rico and the science in Puerto Rico. So, yes, the Arecibo Observatory was the largest radio telescope in the world and a point of pride for Puerto Ricans, whether they were in on the science or not. About 90,000 islanders and tourists visited the observatory every year, a boon to the region. During its almost 57 years in operation, the observatory, built with the money of the U.S. Department of Defense, has been at the forefront of space research and a crucial training ground for space science students. So yes, it's a very important telescope, the largest in the world, and it's collapsed. Yeah, kind of like that scene from James Bond. I forget which one. The one with Sean Bean, where the receiver just collapses right on top of him. Yeah, so kind of like that. Well, not really, but it's just a thing that happened. I point this more towards the general degradation of Puerto Rico, that territory and region. It's been some time, because it's a bit personal for me, because I'm from the Caribbean and I grew up right next to Puerto Rico, so I consider them my neighbors. And, just to see the conditions and deterioration in the island itself, it's a bit disappointing and sad, especially considering that these people want to become a state, but it's never going to happen, because if they make it a state, then they actually have to take care of it, and they'd much rather keep it as a colony. So again, it kind of just points towards American imperialism. And yeah, this receiver, this telescope, just destroyed. I mean, I was kind of looking at images of it, and it already looked pretty dilapidated and broken down. So when it did happen, I wasn't surprised, because I kind of expected something to happen with it. But it's just 2020, right? Everything's going to shit. So the telescope broke, and yeah, it's going to cost a fortune to rebuild it. So they're never going to rebuild it. They're not. They might just go ahead and just build a new one. And there was already reports of them wanting to create a telescope in Hawaii on this mountain, which has created other organizations and protests there between the locals. So it's a weird situation, because at one hand, I do want to respect the rights of the indigenous people there and their culture. And then at the same time, it's a telescope that we could use to, get information on distant planets. And, this would be an especially powerful telescope, so we could actually maybe get images of habitable worlds. Who knows? Anyway, so there's that. So, there's a collapse there. Well, literally collapse of the receiver, but just the whole telescope just busted up. And before I wrap up with the natural segment, I did want to speak on just, in terms of climate change and the effects down the line. I've spoken a bit about having to deal with the wet bulb, and that's, because people are telling me, oh, where do you want to move? And the reason I don't say exactly where I want to go just yet is because I'm trying to take into account the global conditions around 2050. And areas, such as Houston, I don't want to be in. And so I'm reading from ProPublica, and they're pointing towards how climate change will make parts of the U.S. uninhabitable, which will create a climate migration. But they're also pointing that these areas that are poised to be uninhabitable in decades to come, Americans are just moving there. So you have an area where people can't live under and can live in it under natural circumstances, but I guess we have air conditioning, so that helps in many respects. But yeah, so reading from ProPublica, climate change will make parts of the U.S. uninhabitable. Americans are still moving there. Instead of moving away from areas in climate crisis, Americans are flocking to them as lands in places such as Phoenix, Houston, and Miami become less habitable. The country migrations patterns will be forced to change. Over the past year, the advent of a professional economy powered by people working from home has quickened the conversation about where to live, particularly among millennials. Is now the right time to buy property in Minnesota? Is Buffalo the place to be? How important is proximity to fresh water? Should you risk moving somewhere that has fire seasons? How far north do you have to go to find livable summers? Americans have defied the norms of climate migration seen elsewhere in the world, flocking to cities like Phoenix, Houston, and Miami that face some of the greatest risks from soaring temperatures and rising sea levels. Those patterns seem likely to change. New data from the Rhodium Group, analyzed by ProPublica, shows that climate damage will wreak havoc on the southern third of the country, erasing more than 8% of its economic output and likely turning migration from a choice to an imperative. The data shows that the warming climate will alter everything from how we grow food to where people can plausibly live. Ultimately, millions of people will be displaced by flooding, fires, and scorching heat, a resorting of the map not seen since the Dust Bowl in the 1930s. Now as then, the biggest question will be who escapes and who will be left behind. So, yeah. And I mean, they pointed out Houston specifically, and I mean, our summers are bad. Like, the humidity is bad, and that's why I don't want to be here, because people are gonna start dying from it. Yeah, and of course they have Miami also. Miami is gonna be unless they make some kind of seawall, it's gonna be under the ocean by the end of the century. And Phoenix, of course, Phoenix, LA, I mean, in the middle of a desert, no natural water resources. I mean, people just flock there. They're not really paying attention to that. So you gotta, I already see so many people trying to pressure me to move into a city. I'm trying to get the fuck away from cities and, just other goodness there. Yeah. But we have to look at the weather conditions. I want to move to an area that, because I've mainly paid attention to the winters, and I'm okay with the winters in Texas because it gets cold. It gets really cold, but you don't really get like freezing conditions, blizzard conditions, black ice. So I can live with the cold, but then the summers are a bit unbearable. So I'm just trying to figure out where am I going to go. And yeah, it's going to be a trick. It's going to be a struggle, but yeah, we're definitely going to see parts of the U.S. becoming uninhabitable, migration, climate refugees, domestic refugees, as the sea levels continue to rise, flooding, fires, heat, you name it, it's going to just gradually break everything down. And that's the thing about collapse. We have a slow boil. So everybody kind of wants, in some ways I kind of want it too, just a quick collapse, breakdown of everything, because the slow boil in some ways is a bit worse because it's kind of like being the frog in the water. You're just like, well, I mean, you just slowly adjust to the temperature, even though eventually you're going to start boiling. You're just like, well, it could be worse, and then it slowly gets worse. So that's just something we have to deal with there. So with that being said, in terms of migrations and climate change, that's going to take effect, and we'll just have to deal with that. But that's just what I wanted to touch up in this episode, but I did want to give a closing remark before I ended it. And this is a bit personal because, and I don't want to name names, but it's just something that I'm noticing and I'm just trying to navigate. It's having to deal with toxic people in my life, particularly not my family's, not that my family's toxic, but, there's certain people that, if they weren't related to you or you didn't have that much of a connection with, it wouldn't be as difficult to cut them out. But then when you do have a connection with them, it's a tricky, thin ice situation you have to deal with. And it speaks to more about just mental illness in this country, because it kind of it just goes under the rug, And what I'm speaking about is how if you're broke and poor and you have mental illness problems, you got to go get that fixed and you got to deal with that. But since we live in a society that only values material wealth, if you have mental health problems but you're rich and famous, and I shouldn't say rich and famous, but you can rationalize not having to go to a therapist if you're materially well-to-do. Like, oh, I don't have any problems, I'm doing good, and look all the money I got, look all the stuff that I got, I don't have to go to a therapist. There's nothing wrong with me. You got to go because you're broken. You're a bum. And, again, that could be very wrong. This is just what I'm seeing in my personal life. You know, I don't want to name names, but I've seen where there are women in my life who put up with an abusive relationship, a toxic abusive relationship, purely because the guy that they're with has money, has stuff, has it going for him. She doesn't want to break up with him. I mean, I don't know the reasons. She might actually be in love, but they don't want to separate because that means that they would actually have to live on their own, support themselves. So they'd rather just put up with a domestic abusive relationship than actually having to be on their own. This is just like a mild form of Stockholm syndrome. And this is, I have to be very careful what I say, but at the same time, nobody really in my personal life listens to this, so I can kind of say what I want. But it's just, it is absolutely shocking to me how domestic abuse can get just swept under the rug and it can be rationalized, or and these are the people that I'm surrounded by. And I really have to like put my foot down and establish some boundaries or something. But then once you start doing that, it creates a mess. And so that's why I have to get my finances in order so I can just be on my own and not have to answer to anybody. But yeah, there's some real problems, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure some people listening to this, they also know a domestic situation that can absolutely get bad. But then, it's like, what can I do? What can I say? I don't have any evidence. I'm just going off hearsay. And even if I did present evidence, it would create more problems. And, I get dragged into some legal dispute or some domestic dispute that I wanted to stay out of. Yeah, man. It's difficult. This is the situation that I'm in. I am surrounded by people that I desperately do not want to be stuck with in the apocalypse. I desperately do not want to be stuck with these people. But it feels like that I am. It feels like that I'm going to have to fulfill my obligations, whatever they are. So that's why I have to be a little more independent so they don't have that leverage and hook on me. And I can just kind of fuck off and leave them to their device, because it's not like anybody's going to listen to me. They're going to just do what they need to do what they want. And then, me pointing out all the problems going on. Oh, you're the toxic individual. I can certainly see people viewing me as a toxic individual. And it's not that they're not entirely wrong. But, I really want to show them the people that I'm surrounded by and really say, oh, yeah, I'm toxic. Look at this motherfucker. It's just, it's going to be difficult. If I'm going to do this show full time, there will be people who are going to cut me out personally because of the things that I say, because they don't want to be associated with that, and because I'm such a downer. Oh, you just got to change your perspective, man. I mean, I know things are bad, but look on the bright side. It's just like, come on. Just because you're willing to trick yourself into thinking that things are okay doesn't mean I have to. And I'm certainly not going to censor myself because you feel uncomfortable. Okay? What I'm saying, the discomfort you're experiencing pales in comparison to the actual reality that's ahead of us. And it just speaks to, because I don't want to call people, I don't like calling people weak or calling them a pussy, but like, you got a lot of pussies who know it's down the line and are doing nothing to prepare for it. And they just trick themselves into a false sense of security, hopium. I've had to like stop following all this positivity, like influencers and everything's great, mental health check. I can't do it because it's childish naivety. It's a childlike mindset. It really is. And I can't do it. I can't do it. Particularly with the boomer generation, they're trying to like talk to me and like, oh, look on the bright side, things are okay. And I'm like, dude, your generation fucked up the planet, okay? And you're leaving us a world that's worse off than what you inherited. And you're suddenly surprised that young people don't want to listen to you? Come on. So, I don't know, I'm kind of rambling because I certainly feel like the more I dive into this work, the more people are going to distance themselves and, portray me as some toxic, doomer, whatever. But, you know, this is my purpose, or I feel like it's my purpose to talk about this sort of thing because I'm not, I don't know, it's something that I like to do, believe it or not. I like to talk about these things. I like to talk shit. That's why I like to keep it kind of loose on the show. Yeah, I just, some closing comments there. I'm about to go talk to my therapist. So, yeah, and I do have a therapist. But I wanted to just record and say something personally and get some things off my chest before I actually go talk to this guy because he's taking notes, and I know if I say something weird, he's going to be like, oh, well, he says corporations are the devil, or, whatever. He doesn't know I have a show, but he's not a bad person, but some people you just got to keep your cards closed. Yeah. A lot of toxicity. A lot of toxicity in my life that I have to navigate through. And this is something that's going to take years to navigate. Especially considering that these are friends and family that I need to distance and set boundaries with. Again, the only person I have any obligation to is my mother. Everybody can shut up, honestly. And even sometimes she needs to be quiet. I'm just sorry. There's only so much input that I can take before I just say, all right, shut up. I'm just going to do what I want, because it seems like that's what everybody else is doing, so it's one of those instances where, I kind of bitch and moan about the game, right? The rules of the game. And it's not even that I'm upset about the game itself, because I know it's the case. Like, okay, this is the game, but I'm more upset at the people that are telling me, oh, this is not, you're just seeing it differently. Like, I'm more upset at the people that are telling me that this is not how it is when it very clearly the way it is. And that is something that I have to deal with. Anyway, these are just some closing words. I just want to get some things off my chest and leave you with some thoughts. And again, you can make a comment or, call me out or, maybe add some input. This is, I really want to create a dialogue here, and I really need to start being more engaging, right? Yeah. Again, I do have a Patreon, so you could follow me there for $1 a month, and we can have a dialogue there. It would be certainly good to have a network and establish something there. So Patreon, and I have YouTube, and with exclusive content coming up, I wanted to, again, do the Collapse Gaming. I am working, which is good. I need to work and make money, but I would like to make this more of a thing for y'all and just for myself and record. I don't know. Streaming is something that I'll have to warm up to because when it comes to live content, I get kind of shy and stumble or whatever. But yeah, I'll have to work that in time, especially with Cyberpunk coming out. That's it's gonna be a lot of fun playing that. So yeah, YouTube, Patreon. Also got my Twitter, and I do have my personal email, collapsetalk@outlook.com or collapsetalkpod@outlook.com. And yeah, those are the plugs I can think of. But again, we got the Christmas rolling around, and I have some other personal stuff in my life, so I gotta work. I gotta, my mom, she's got a new house now, so I gotta help her move in. So I didn't want to make this a weekly thing, but it appears that these next couple of weeks are gonna be busy for me. So I'll have to fit in whatever recordings that I can with the time that I have. But yeah, so I might release another episode before the end of the year, or we'll just start a new one with the next year, 2021, which is going to be a lot of fun. A lot of fun. But we'll see. I'll keep y'all posted on Twitter. But for the time being, I really appreciate y'all just listening for now as the year wraps up and as we ready ourselves for what's coming down the line. People are thinking that things are going to turn up. On this show, we don't think that. This is just a general decline. But again, if things do turn around, great, yay. But it's not nothing, anything's changed. But anyway, that's it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope y'all are gonna do the best that you can with this holiday season. Christmas is rolling around, and of course, COVID cases are rising, so definitely watch out there. And also just dealing with family issues if you have any. I'm certainly in the same boat there, but we just got to deal with it, because naturally Christmas and holiday seasons are just stressful in general. So this year is just exacerbating it. But you do what you can, do what you can and make do, and try to mitigate stress however you can. But anyway, I just want to part there. Thanks for tuning in, and hope to see y'all on the next episode. Stay safe and stay healthy.